We're talking about DeFi composability, designing usable money Legos with DAOs and games. So getting into the Web3 space can overwhelm a new user, but smart contract design can smooth out that friction. We're going to talk to some of the leading teams about design and gaming and DAOs, along with the need for an Oracle solution. This panel is going to be led by Priyanka Desai of OpenLaw and the Lao, and then we're going to have Alex, Aleksander, and Corey on this panel. Thanks, guys. Take it away.
Hey, everyone. Thanks, Dustin. So Priyanka here from OpenLaw and the Lao. Thanks for joining this great panel with our guests, Alex from Enjin, Aleksander from Axie, and Corey from DMM. Today, we're really going to talk about the cross-section of DAOs, DeFi, gaming, and the tremendous potential there. Actually, on the OpenLaw side, we're also contemplating an NFT DAO, just to throw that out there. And this topic is very, very hot right now, so I'm excited to get going. So I guess just to kick things off, it'd be great just to get a brief introduction from all of you and maybe a super quick description of what you guys are doing. So maybe Alex, I'll start with you.
Hey everyone, I'm Alex from Enjin. So Enjin is providing a suite of blockchain products that basically enable anyone to easily interact with the Ethereum blockchain, managing, exploring, distributing, and integrating blockchain assets into their projects. So comprised of the Enjin platform, the Enjin marketplace, an Enjin wallet, our Beam distribution product, and many other tools and services, we're helping a whole range of different projects integrate blockchain into their vision. My role is head of developer partnerships at Enjin. So I oversee relationships with more than 30 projects and partners who are using our platform currently. And I also lead the outreach. So basically from hour to hour, I'll be having a conversation assuming zero blockchain knowledge as someone's interested in using our technology. And then later I'll be talking to other people in the blockchain community and having to understand all of these yams and working out if I'm a Chad or a Karen. So really excited to have this conversation and discuss DeFi and gaming.
Awesome. Aleksander, it'd be great to hear a little bit from you too.
Yeah, thank you, Pri. So my name is Aleksander. I'm one of the co-founders of Axie Infinity and Sky Mavis. I also serve as the secretary of the board on the Blockchain Game Alliance. And in Axie Infinity, we're making a digital pet universe where players can use their cute characters in many different kind of games. We're frequently ranked as one of the top games on Ethereum, if not the top games on Ethereum, and kind of getting a little bit recognized for pioneering this whole play-to-earn aspect of gaming. And now we're also moving into, I should say, DAOs and that kind of thing. So I'm very excited about this talk, and I'm happy to be here.
Awesome, great. Corey?
Hey guys, I'm Corey Caplan from the DeFi Money Market Foundation, one of the co-founders of DMM and acting CTO. We are building an interest-earning protocol that's uncorrelated from the rest of the market, attempting to provide stable yield to on-chain DeFi participants. And we're doing this by tokenizing real-world assets in pools and offering them as interest-earning tokens to our users. Really excited to be here and talk about the landscape with you guys and talk about more of the things that we're doing and trying to accomplish with Chainlink.
Awesome, great. So let's just dive right in. In many ways, if you think about financial systems and capital markets, just kind of stripping it down, in a way, it's like a game. Have you guys been following this cross-section of gaming, memes, DeFi that we're seeing emerge, especially like I would say over the last few weeks, kind of came by storm, especially with like Aave and Pineapple. How do you think we'll see DeFi interact with gaming going forward, and if this is a continued trend? Anyone feel free to jump in.
I guess maybe I can start here.
Yeah.
So for Axie Infinity, I think we are a little bit before the trend. So I'm going to start, I think, with the first collaboration that we had with MakerDAO, which was, I think, quite some time ago. So the idea there was that for those players or for those people who had opened up CDPs, they were able to claim a specific set of items inside our game universe. So if you had a CDP with $150, you got the lowest tier of item. Then you had one with $1,500, you got the mid tier, and then if you had over $15,000 worth of collateral locked in a CDP, you got the highest tier of items. And I think these kind of collaborations make a lot of sense between gaming and DeFi. We've done also similar things with, for example, Kyber Network. What we see now in terms of this whole yield farming craze, and I would say Aave is probably way more on the DeFi specific side than we are on more of the gaming side. I think both aspects have a very kind of a clear use case, and I find Aave to be very exciting. But for me, the real value between DeFi and gaming is more in kind of the interoperability between the ways of basically you can tap into liquidity from, for example, Uniswap. And we've seen that happen with some of the items that players can find in our games. So I'm very excited about that. And I think it's definitely a value add for games. It's just that we haven't really seen too many games kind of tap into that yet.
Yeah, I think an interesting point on top of that is one of the best parts of that has made DeFi take off in this way is the gamification of different aspects of these protocols in order to be able to provide extra incentives or make the protocol interaction a bit more fun. Like the concept of yield farming, just in of itself, the name for it is quite interesting, and it lends itself to a lot of curiosity of what it is, how it works, why I should be doing this, and why is it potentially lucrative to interact with in the first place. As far as the interaction, I think that a lot of the cross examination between a lot of the gaming things that are being built, as well as the cross-section of that at DeFi, is that a lot of the stuff is built upon the tokenization of key things, whether it's NFTs, non-fungible tokens, or fungible tokens themselves like ERC20s or things that are compatible with ERC20. And you can see a lot of them actually be able to be fit into a DeFi landscape essentially very easily, whether it's decentralized exchanges or prediction markets or auctions that have been occurring or things like that. And I think that it's going to lend itself to a lot of composability, which is exciting, which is, I guess, one of the big things that we're talking about today, as well as gamification schemes that lead to rewards for interesting interactions with these games in the first place or these protocols.
I have to very much agree there. I think the key part is that fun aspect. A lot of games are chasing the high score, and I think at the moment people are chasing the high scores of yield farming and different DeFi activities. For me, the conversation of DeFi and gaming really happened a while ago with Pool Together. And the fact that you can earn interest by essentially saving your money. And coming from the UK, we have something called premium bonds, which are exactly the same system. You buy premium bonds and you're entered into a regular lottery to win the interest from all of that money that's been pooled together. And so I think the ability to make activities fun, it'll be really interesting to see how we turn that into incentivizing people to make clever, sensible, probably also stupid financial decisions. And I think fun is a key part of interaction with these products. But also what you were saying, Aleksander, about the composability. I was reading a few days ago, CoinDesk had a great article about people playing Axie Infinity, or basically earning money through Axie Infinity. Gathering for love potions, breeding Axies and trading them, and really creating their own game, because you also have to compete with Ethereum congestion and gas fees to make sure you still have a margin as you're spending in the game. But all of that wouldn't be possible if there was the whole DeFi infrastructure like Uniswap surrounding the game that you can plug into easily. And it's going to be fascinating. Seeing more games interact with that infrastructure, and also the reverse, as we see with Aave, games being created which plug into DeFi activity. And Enjin adopters are building their own virtual economies in their games. So I'm very excited to see how players are going to work them to their own advantage. We have the 6 Dragons, where people are already renting out recipes to enable others to blacksmith special items. And in 9 Lives Arena, people are breeding these Oogie aliens to mine and craft for you 24/7. So really excited to see gaming and DeFi come closer together and also create completely new projects.
Awesome, great. Kind of on that note, especially when it comes to composability, which is a conversation as far as like putting different Legos together and making something a cohesive product, which is a good user experience, is something that a lot of folks in this space talk about. So do you guys think it's possible that perhaps like solving this UX UI problem, that gaming could potentially be that on-ramp for DeFi, especially when it comes to composability and composing these different products together?
I think for me, it's not really a UX UI problem for DeFi. It's more blockchain overall. So I was always excited about Enjin's role in this space because of that blockchain gaming element. People were saying, gaming will be the entry point for using blockchain, despite the friction that exists. And gaming is an industry which has a huge amount of research and development going into creating experience that attract and also retain users. So it is a space that's constantly analyzing user behavior and working that to people's advantage. So actually what we've seen recently with Enjin's projects is that it's been enterprise demand has been really driving us to improve user experience. And that's because they love the technology, but we need to reduce the friction of interacting with the technology in order for these products to be used by existing employees and communities. And I think the same goes to gaming. We need to learn from gaming and creating very enjoyable, pleasant, easy experiences that are addictive, for better or for worse.
I think just also adding to that, if you look at the landscape back in 2017 or so, and we had one of the first very large manias around smart contract platforms. As developers, we had a lot of assumptions around what the users would be able to do or not be able to handle at the time that were proven to, for better or for worse, incorrect or correct in certain areas. And I think now at this point, now that there's been a lot of shakeout and a lot more scaffolding put in place, be it developer SDKs or new technology has been built on top of the existing infrastructure. A lot of the developers and engineers are now building things with a UX experience, user experience in mind from the get-go, instead of just taking certain leaps and hurdles that like every user will download MetaMask, every user will now have this wallet. We now have a lot of assumptions, which is people will interact from their phones, from different wallets, from desktop, from different areas of the world. And there's a lot of tooling being built around making that onboarding experience as easy as possible. And then also the experience of interacting with the applications from there on forth also as easy as possible. I mean, speaking less so on the gaming part of it, like USDC was Circle just the other day released a gasless requests, or was it 2 days ago? But regardless, it was a very big step forward for decreasing friction with very simple things like gas payments for users to be able to interact with very, very large and prominent tokens. And I'm sure that games are also taking similar steps forward to reduce friction as well.
Actually, I am 100% convinced that is going to happen. Basically, that games will be the on-ramp for DeFi. So coming from the gaming space, like being here since the very early stages of the blockchain gaming, kind of where it all started, I think we saw a lot of projects come into the space. They were thinking that they were going to copy what's worked in a traditional gaming space and then turn that into a blockchain. The fact is that making a blockchain game is much more like making a network in itself, where you actually have to deal with how people are thinking in terms of incentives. And you also need to consider everything in the broader network aspect of it. And instead of just like this one game, everything is connected. So that goes back to what Alex said about the small love potion, which actually for us was kind of this early experiment to see what would happen if we released it initially without any pre-mine, because that's very kind of a crypto word, but we didn't even sell it. It was just kind of this way that people could earn it through the game. And I think that's also a very early kind of yield farming thing, really. But one thing about the DeFi space right now is that I am actually not convinced that there are so many new users coming in. It's pretty much the same people from my perspective, at least, that are playing these money games and kind of dumping on each other. I think with games, we have a new chance, but while it's about the user experience for sure, it's also a lot about the way that you design these games. So even if you have a great user experience, if there is no way for them to kind of go deeper into the game that you are designing, like there is no foundation, why would they even stick around? At that point, there is nothing special about it. There's nothing magic. But for DeFi, it's much easier because they can just simply copy and paste the existing actually all the existing kind of financial applications, I should say, or the things in the financial space and kind of decentralize it. For games, it's much harder actually, because it doesn't really make sense to decentralize a game immediately. You have to come at it from a different mindset.
Awesome, Alexander, I love that answer. Very saucy take. I appreciate that. But no, I guess kind of on that note, when you were speaking of networks as well, when you start creating this like virtual world through a game with real economic assets, then you have to start thinking about that network, decisions, governance. Thus, then we start getting this idea of DAOs. We have Decentraland I've seen, and other kind of gaming DAOs slowly emerging. Do you guys have any thoughts there? Is that Is that something you guys are considering? Would love to just hear your thoughts as far as like gaming DAOs and how that's going.
Yeah, so I think that actually connects very well to kind of what I was speaking to just now. So with Axie, we kind of started out only with non-fungible tokens, or these unique game characters where people could kind of use them. And then because we actually thought that there was only shit coins around, like they didn't even make any sense. Why would you have a coin like just to use for payment? Like when you can just use Ethereum or Ether or Bitcoin or DAI or these kind of things, like it doesn't make sense to have just lock-in for currency. There needs to be more things. And then kind of you come to the kind of the natural next step, which is a governance token or some kind of way to make the people who are participating, like adding value to your game or to your network, how can they actually participate in the value that's being created and kind of drive that value creation by interacting with the token. And I think that's the kind of the key aspect of a DAO too. Like the people need to be able to earn the ownership aspect, the kind of the token, by creating value for the platform or the game that you're creating. And that's exactly what we're going to do in Axie. So it's still a little bit kind of secrets. Things have started to leak out a little bit, but we're going kind of to be opening up the platform more in terms of ownership and governance. But the thing is, in terms of games, as I mentioned, like it's much harder to make a sustainable thing that lasts for a really, really long time without a ship captain. So I see it's happening in DeFi all the time. Like these platforms are coming out, they're saying, okay, now it's decentralized. But that for games, like you really need to have that grand vision, design. You need to be pushing forward for many, many years. So that's why I don't think it makes sense to do it immediately. But what you can do is you can start distributing this token and then progressively decentralize the platform or game that you're creating through that, as long as you have like a clear roadmap. So that's kind of a secret too, but yeah, that's happening in Axie, and I'm very excited to see other kind of game protocols or games do that as well.
Awesome. Anyone else have thoughts on DAOs and gaming? And
yeah, I think overall, a lot of the things that Aleksander said were very applicable to the construction of a DAO and where the value creation is really it's essentially sucked in by the community and really grabbed a hold of through them. And speaking for the DeFi money market ecosystem, we're looking at similar ways to be able to do that. Of course, with us being more of a financially driven application instead of a game, things are definitely a bit easier on us for it, essentially because the value accrual as an ecosystem participant is a bit more clear, as opposed to this ship captain that Aleksander was alluding to, which I don't envy the challenge you guys have trying to design that for the long term. That sounds very difficult. But for us in particular, there's some very clear-cut ways where ecosystem participants can add liquidity to certain areas and then essentially be providing value back to the ecosystem, which is something heavy I want to talk about a bit later in our chat today. But it's something that we've actually been designing with our concept of yield farming, which is our take on it. And it's a bit different for our ecosystem compared to others, just because of our ecosystem being a little bit different from other ecosystems. But overall, I think that there's this really interesting idea of being able to use a native token for an ecosystem to align incentives of everyone that's in the ecosystem as well, and being able to provide value back to it. And then, of course, being rewarded for it too. It kind of gives use cases beyond the initial, I'm going to use my token as a payment mechanism, but it also is used to, like I said, align incentives then, as well as flex and be flexible over time to be able to match the needs of an evolving ecosystem and DAO that's behind it then.
Yeah, I think it's going to be fascinating watching these projects evolve and try and move towards a more decentralized state. It's going to be an area that many people will learn from. I think a lot of things are going to be broken before they work, and it's going to be a really exciting process to watch. I think in terms of the gaming space that I'm seeing, what's really cool to see is that projects are already being advanced in a very collaborative manner, where instead of perhaps doing an equity share or revenue share, people are being rewarded with NFTs and game assets for their contributions, whether that be community management, art design, or actual development. And so it's really interesting seeing these communities built around the shared game assets, and how they decide to govern themselves and interact with one another is going to be fascinating to see, and lead to a lot of lessons learned there. Also, in terms of the sort of esports space, having very interesting conversations and seeing actually within the Enjin community itself, games that are in closed alpha, which are very sort of competitive, they're already forming up their own sort of esports organizations and strategies. And this idea that you could have sort of esports DAOs where people pool powerful or interesting game assets, which can be shared by the community. And then when it comes to time for a tournament, you can put forward your best player, supply them with the best of your assets, and go tackle other esports DAOs. I think we're going to see all sorts of interesting scenarios brought out like that. And the most exciting parts are still yet to come. But the genesis of those ideas and projects, I'm already seeing in the projects that Enjin's working with and building. So it's really, really cool.
That's great. And congratulations. You guys are crushing it. So I guess now that we're at, just to table set here, we are at the Smart Contract Summit. It'd be great to try to understand how Chainlink specifically feeds into what you're doing. So, if you think about it, Chainlink is the bridge to the real world in many of these virtual realities or gaming realities. Can you each explain how Chainlink plays a role in the architecture and the importance of oracles in your smart contract? And if you haven't yet, are there ways that you plan on using it in the future? And it would just be great to hear more about that and what you guys are using Chainlink for. I don't know who wants to go first here.
I'll jump in. I love the Chainlink team. Also, thank you to everyone, Rory. Thanks for organizing this whole conference. And oracles are incredibly important in this space, and they're going to be used in very interesting ways. Actually, a later session, one of the Enjin adopted projects, Savas of the Six Dragons, he'll be speaking on a Chainlink solution that he's using. So I won't spoil that, but definitely do tune in for random number generation. I'm really excited for oracles bringing real-world dynamic data to NFTs, and I think that's going to be a fascinating space to watch develop. And I think this is very much watch this space and see what happens, because linking that dynamic data to virtual economies and virtual assets is going to become very exciting very quickly.
Actually, on that note, I'm kind of curious, what kind of data do you think would be relevant for what you're building, or is there any specific kind of? Because I'm not a massive gamer, but I like to pay attention to the space, and so it'd be kind of interesting to think about like the real world interacting with this gaming world. Are there like specific pieces of data you think could really add to this virtual world that could make it more real?
I think one example we see a lot of conversations around would be sports games, where you collect virtual versions of real world sports players, and week by week, their abilities and attributes change based on the real world performance. I mean, there are already games that operate like that, and I think linking them to oracles and making basically enhancing all of those features will be exciting to see. But yeah, sports is kind of the obvious answer there, and I think a lot of projects are already exploring that space.
Awesome. Corey, I'd love to hear about how you're using Chainlink, or if you guys have thought about it.
Yeah, the way that we're using them right now, and also the way that we're expanding our use case, is definitely interesting and quite different compared to other ecosystem players. In particular with what we're doing, because we also are tied to these real world assets, as we keep alluding to, as we want to potentially onboard new assets. So right now we're working with, in particular, car equity lines of credit or special financial instruments surrounding cars. As we want to expand that use case to, for example, we're exploring onboarding 2 PC-12 aircraft, private aviation. Chainlink's actually going to be a part of the trustless process of being able to accept those assets into the ecosystem through essentially a couple new Chainlink adapters that we're developing with them. With that, there's also some movement of crypto into fiat or into real-world dollars that occurs in order for us to be able to tokenize these assets. We're actually working with Chainlink in order to be able to track the movement of fiat funds in order to maximize transparency of where dollars are when they're not actually locked up in an asset pool. So kind of like when it's in like that in-transit process, but not when it's in crypto, because then obviously when it's in crypto, everyone can see it. And not quite when it's already in an asset pool, because Chainlink's already tracking that, but rather when it's in that limbo in-between stage, which could take a couple business days depending on the flow of fiat funds. So there's a couple really interesting things like that we're trying to work on that Chainlink makes possible, because otherwise this entire process would be the opposite of trustless. You have to trust the foundation / DAO running behind this completely in order for this to work properly. But instead, Chainlink is able to offer transparency and a level of trustlessness into the ecosystem that wouldn't have been there otherwise. And I think that things like staking that they're adding into on a protocol level will make a very big difference into deterring node operators in the Chainlink ecosystem from otherwise manipulating this data or doing bad things to it. Because if, for example, them manipulating this data would result in them losing their stake completely, it'll otherwise act as a financial deterrent from them doing anything nefarious. So there's some really interesting things going on that will help with not just building out these really large use cases that are potentially securing even more money than it already is right now, but it'll also help with further aligning incentives of these independent node operators with the data they're actually retrieving then.
Interesting.
Yeah, so I guess I'll have to leak a little bit here. So for Axie, we haven't actually officially announced anything with Chainlink, but the story there is quite long. So we've been doing our own way of randomization things for quite some time. So in Axie, for example, whenever you breed two Axies, it sends a call to a contract. And then there is all this fancy stuff, which then again leads to popping out a brand new Axie. And to avoid that people are kind of, or not hacking that, but kind of listening in on a call, there's all these things in the background, which we've actually made ourselves for now. And then we already tapped into something called Oracleize for some time too. But what is basically happening is that there are so many things inside games that requires like randomization and using oracles that we've been looking for a solution for quite some time. So we've been in touch with the Chainlink team. I met Dan in Korea last year. So it's been a lot of back and forth, and we are now almost getting ready to announce something, but I can't say exactly what it's going to be, but we're also going to be, we're doing our own sidechain for Axie Infinity, and there's definitely a possibility that Chainlink will be one of the providers on that chain. So.
Great. I'm looking forward to hearing about that. And I guess in the word of Link Marines, soon. That's like their big meme, but soon or tonight.
Maybe soon. We'll see.
I don't know. So on that note, I mean, we have to wrap. Unfortunately, I could continue talking about this, but any last words, or if someone wants to reach you, what's the best way to do that? Feel free just to give your quick wrap here.
Yeah, so for me, you can find me on Twitter. My handle is @psychout86. And you should also definitely join the Axie Infinity Discord to see that there is real adoption happening right in front of our very eyes. That people are actually using these crypto projects and crypto game products. So yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah, the best way to reach me would be at Twitter as well, Corey Caplan3. Right now, our Telegram and Discord are quite used as well for the DeFi money market community. And then with that, also, we're excited to announce that next week we're going to be actually rolling out our proposal for onboarding yield farming into our ecosystem. And we'll be releasing more details on what that will look like and how it's going to actually work then. But really excited to be able to have the opportunity to speak here with you guys. It's been a pleasure. Thank you.
Yeah, it's been a huge pleasure speaking with you guys. And I guess the audience, stick around for more of me talking about Enjin's scaling solution on Ethereum.
Awesome. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, everybody.